I recently built the first RC car that I've ever built in my life, the Model 18 Reaper from 3D Set. And right on the heels of that, I've got this kit from BigTreeTech to build myself a DeathRacer, a RC car meets Rock'em Sock'em Robot. I also have what would be best described as no time before I leave for England. By the time you're seeing this video, I'm probably already in the air, headed to Manchester, England for SMRRF 2024, Sanjay Mortimer RepRap Festival, where we're gonna be battling these robots. So I gotta get this thing built now. Real talk for those who don't know, what is a DeathRacer? Basically, it is a light-duty battle bot. You're not aiming to destroy your other competitors, just knock their block off. Like I said, Rock'em Sock'em Robot. You want to knock off the head because there's a kill switch underneath there that'll shut down their robot, and the goal is to be the last one standing. These have been around for a few years at RepRap Festivals, 3D printing conventions, effectively. And I've been wanting to build one as long as they've been around, but they've been self-sourced to this point, meaning you have to go buy every individual component to put it together, and I was never an RC person, as I already said. Now, our friends at BigTreeTech, who did provide this kit for this video, but are not sponsoring it, offered up these kits. So now all the hardware components, the motors, the electronic speed controller, the remote control are all in this box, so you can build it a lot easier. So someone like me who couldn't previously justify building one of these now can, thanks to these kits. That said, this video does have a sponsor, and we're going to be using their materials throughout this project, and that is the folks at CookieCad. They're not only sponsoring this build of the DeathRacer, so we're going to be using their beautiful PETG filament throughout to build this really ridiculously colored DeathRacer, but they're also sponsoring my trip to Manchester, England for SMRRF 2024. So thank you so much to them for making this build happen and that trip. And if you happen to make it out to the Sanjay Mortimer RepRap Festival in Manchester, England this coming weekend, this date, sorry anybody afterward or who couldn't make it to the show, I'm going to be giving away this CookieCad edition Voron Zero that I built this year using a white powder-coated frame and CookieCad's ABS filaments that look gorgeous in this. I'm really going to be sad to see it go, but it's going through a good cause, the Sanjay Mortimer Foundation. It's for charity, so please consider coming out and trying to win this thing. There will be plenty of time to talk about CookieCad's materials throughout this video. You can find a link to them in the description. For now, let's get to building this thing because I am so short on time. A quick note, this is not going to be a beginning to end build guide. I simply don't have the time for that. I need to leave for the airport in about 8 hours, and I'm not done yet. I am going to cover some of the build around the drive system that I found confusing, complicated, and wish the instructions were better about. So let's get into this. I've definitely got thoughts about this kit, and we'll discuss them more as we go. They're definitely not all positive, but I am glad that it exists so I can get to building this thing and not have to source every little bit and bob for myself. Now, I've previously printed a pile of PETG parts for this project, but I haven't prepared them all. So pieces like this Funfetti PETG filament print still have brims attached to them and other similar things that I need to deal with right now. Let's talk about the colors I chose for this. I already said Funfetti filament for the frame and functional bits. I'm happy with the way that looks. Semi-translucent, a bit sparkly, a fun look. I also used Mermaid, which is a teal to purple transition color. I use that for some of the frame components and other accents for the rider robot that's going to be on this build, as well as Dark Magic, which is this dark blackish purple, kind of an oil slicky look, and has sparkle in there as well. For the bludger, the weapon of this thing, I used Witchcraft PETG, which has this lighter purple look to it than the Dark Magic. And also, you notice the spikes are a different color? They have TPU now, the folks at CookieCad, so I used that to make TPU spikes on this thing, as well as the tracks that are 3D printed. They are TPU rubbery flexible material, and I used unicorn filament, which has this blue to pink transition to it. But the print files are kind of where I feel like I need to stop and talk about the things I don't like about the BigTreeTech kit so I can just keep rolling when it comes to putting this thing together. And there are definitely things I don't like about this kit. The print files being chief among them. When you buy this kit, you get this kit, there's no instruction sheet in the box whatsoever. We'll come back to that. There's also no direct information saying where to get the print files, the STLs, so you can make this thing. You get them via the Patreon of the original DeathRacer designer. Now, do not get me wrong, I 1000% agree with supporting the designer and making sure that they get their due out of this. But it seems to me that BigTreeTech could have paid them $1, $5 for every kit that's sold and included a USB stick that has the STLs I need in the box. Especially because the specific print files for this kit are not the original DeathRacer files. They changed a few minor pieces of hardware and such that they could source for this, so you need the right print files. And I know more than one person who has gotten one of these kits and then printed the wrong parts because it's not clearly spelled out which parts are for it. Now the print files say kit, but they still don't say BigTreeTech Kit. So again, it's not 100% clear. There is a QR code on the front of the box that sends you to Sam Prentice's YouTube channel, and it says it'll go to Sam's tutorial videos to learn, and that's your instructions effectively. Problem is, again, as I said, they've updated the hardware in this kit, so Sam's older videos aren't going to be applicable to the specifics of this kit. The other issue is it just dumps you onto Sam's YouTube channel. That's it, not a tutorial video, just onto his YouTube channel. So you kind of have to go fishing and find what video is going to be the one you need. This has nothing to do with Sam. It's not his fault. He is featured on the front of this thing, but he's not making any money off of these kits. It's not his doing here. What's grating about this to me is BigTreeTech, I generally hold above so many other companies. I tell other companies to look at what BigTreeTech is doing when it comes to documentation and files associated with their main boards and their electronics because they do such a good job. So here, it's a complete about-face 180 and just feels like a major ball drop. I have been told by Sam, and I've heard rumblings from the BigTreeTech team that things are changing and they are going to be improving this. Hopefully by the time you're watching this video or shortly afterward, there's going to be print files directly available and things will be worked out here. Hopefully for the best. Maybe I'll see about pinning something in the comments if things change. Rant over, let's get to building this thing. Assembly is going to start from the ground up. We'll be building the drive system with the motors and gear reduction first. We get a pair of supplied motors, but we have to modify them right out of the box. The shafts are too long for the spur gears to fit on and then fit into the planetary gear reduction, so they have to be cut down. I don't want to make a racket right now because it's rather late, so I'm going to use a pair of my mini bolt cutters from Knipex. Yes, seriously. Once the shaft is cut down, we tap a spur gear onto that shaft. It's a pretty tight press fit. I learned about doing this from Sam Prentice's video on the gearbox design for the BigTreeTech kits. And then a short time later, I actually had to double back to this. I realized that I did not have this protruding enough from here, and I cut off, I think, probably too much of that shaft. This might be one of those instances where something has been updated. The video that I saw of Sam talking about doing this was from September. It's now December. This shaft is a through shaft all the way, so I can drive this out a little bit and get it to protrude from here and mesh into our gearbox assembly the way that I need it to. I got it protruding from there. I don't think it's enough because I most likely trimmed down that shaft too much. It's flush on the other side. There's not really much I can do there. So I am where I am. I also beat up this gear trying to get it back out of there. I'm going to be lucky if this works well. Also, Sam recommends powering up the motor and making sure it spins well. I did that before I put the gearbox on. Then I did it after I put the gearbox on. But once I had it in with the assembly, now granted, this engagement wasn't good from that gear, but I wasn't getting any motor spin to the point where I think I saw a little bit of magic smoke. So I'm going to be real lucky if these motors work at all. Beating a gear onto there, pressing it on would be the right thing, but then I would have had to back support the shaft, press it with an arbor press or something I don't have set up currently in this space. Nowhere in any of the instructions or demonstrations I've seen does it talk about doing that. I understand I should know better, but none of this has felt ideal, and I sure do wish they would just press that on there from the factory or give you the right shaft length out of the box. I just thought to hook up my benchtop power supply real quick and bench test it without using the battery. I threw the battery on charge thinking maybe that was weak. Doesn't seem like it would be, but here we are. Benchtop testing did in fact work, so both my motors are functioning. We'll see if they function in the car. We then have to take the 4 screws out of the gear reduction box. That'll get us to the mounting flange we need to mount to our motor first. Our mounting flange gets mounted to the motor with a pair of M3x8 countersunk screws. I definitely use Loctite on these to ensure they're not going to loosen up. Then we can slide on our planetary gear reduction box and install the 4 screws that hold that on. Once I have a couple of screws on there, I would recommend spinning it to make sure that the gear reduction is spinning the motor too, so you avoid the issue that I had before. This metal flange gets mounted to our gear, which will adapt from our gearbox to our drive wheels. M3x8 countersunk screws screw into the plastic gear through the metal flange. Why they're countersunk, I don't know, because the flange isn't. My only guess is the self-centering nature of countersunk screws. And a tiny little grub screw needs to be inserted into the flange. I'm definitely going to use Loctite on this. Then our flange slips over our motor gearbox shaft onto this assembly, and I have no idea how far this is supposed to be spaced off of here. The instructions that are provided and the videos that I found don't say. This does look like it'll be slightly accessible, so I'm assuming I'm going to have to put the rest of the pieces together as best I can, not blocking this, and just see where the gear mesh lines up for the drive gear and then tighten this. An M3x10 countersunk screw comes through the side of this and threads into the plastic of the gearbox motor mount. Maybe, eventually, kind of. Yeah, it threads into plastic and it is not confidence inspiring. I'm personally making sure to not tighten all the screws until all of them are started. This is the way I assemble pretty much anything that has multiple screws attaching it. Don't tighten any one of them until all of them are started. And there is our assembly with unknown gear setting at this second. Now we put a bearing in each end of this housing to accept the axle shafts. Here is our drive gear if it's actually going to drive this thing off of the 90 degree from the gearbox here. I'm going to insert this through my axle shaft and then mesh it into that motor gear so I can figure out where that motor gear wants to ride here. Looks like I could probably set backlash and then tighten through the frame here. With my backlash feeling pretty good and the grub screw tightened onto the motor shaft, I don't think it's on the D as I said, so annoying on that. I wish it was, but we'll put the other half of our drive assembly on and then put a pair of countersunk screws through that into our main shaft. The screws that hold the idler wheels to the main drive wheels on this assembly should be M3x50s. I used M3x10s at first, so the 50s will go through the shaft further and reinforce it. With our motor gearbox sled, I'm calling it, put together, we're ready for the main frame. That is the wing-shaped piece, kind of looks like the center section of the Serenity, that we're going to mount our motor assembly to. There are a pair of 6mm carbon fiber rods that are included with the kit. We press these through the main frame to reinforce the motor wings. This will stiffen up the chassis and provide a little bit more rigidity. There's some detents in the motor sled and the chassis side for those carbon fiber rods to mate together and align things. Then we run some M3x10 countersunk screws into the plastic yet again. I'm sorry to keep harping on with that, like, I understand that that is a simple and affordable way to put something together. Just, I don't design anything threaded into plastic these days. Everything I do is heat press insert. I would love to go back and remix all these parts and make that happen, but I simply, as I've said numerous times, don't have the time. To add to my stress of my time limits, I also accidentally printed 2 of the same motor pieces, and I didn't notice till I went to put it together. They're the same. You're supposed to be a mirror image one. I must have accidentally just hit reprint on the print and just forgot about it. So I'm running off another one of these. I have to fully disassemble this and then rebuild it on the other one. So let's move on to the track. In total, we need 60 TPU track treads. Each of those has a hole on each side to accept a 2mm by 50mm stainless steel rod that is included with the hardware in the kit. This is definitely a tight fit, but that's how we want it to be. I'm gonna gently tap it in with a hammer, lining up both of the tread pieces together and then driving the pin all the way through them. You can see that this creates a pivoting hinge joint and 30 more times per side. And then we get a pair of forbidden candy bars with 30 treads per candy bar. They're not really chocolatey, they're kind of like gummy in my case, but I think they look pretty darn good. I ran 2 batches of the Unicorn TPU from CookieCad and ended up with these slightly different gradients on them. That's going to create like a tracking pattern along as my tracks run, I think. Now, of course, we got to complete the track tread, so we will loop this all the way around our motor drive assembly and put in the last pin on each track, mounting these to the treads to the motors, I meant. You've kind of got to stretch this onto here, and doing it in the free span wasn't proving very easy. Putting it around one of the cog wheels allows me to use the teeth to help hold it together in position so I can then drive the pin in, I'm finding. Oh yeah, that's definitely the ticket. While I'm waiting on my other motor frame to finally finish printing, I'm going to put on one of my side panels, my custom MandicReally one. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. I printed this on the Prusa XL with all of the colors of this build, including the TPU. A couple of these hexes right here are those TPU pieces. Okay, from here on, I need to hit the ground running on this, and I can't keep covering this. I just filmed that section where I said it's 4 a.m. and I have to leave for the airport in 8 hours, and this is the state the thing is in right now. So let's come back when I've got this together and running. After a literal all-nighter, I present to you the MandicReally CookieCad DeathRacer. Missing one glaring thing. From the moment I knew I was going to build one of these things, I wanted to customize it to fit my brand, to fit me. And I do a lot of CAD work for myself, so I knew I wanted to dive in and make this like a spaceship or something crazy, but I had no time. So I did at least get one concession in. I knew I wanted my mascot, Gene, my cat, but also the alien cat who is my mascot for this channel that I've never actually shown you folks before right now, to be the driver, the rider on this thing. So I set out to get a 3D model of Gene's head. Lately, I have been diving into 3D modeling in Nomad Sculpt, actually sculpting, not just parametric CAD design like I usually do. However, I had no time for this project, such a theme, so I did something that some folks are gonna hate, and honestly, I think I hate too, because it hurts my business. I turned to AI. I put one of the images we have drawn up of Gene into this program Rodin, and it spit out an okay 3D model. I had to pay to get a better quality export, so I had a good base to work with, as I knew I was gonna have to clean this up in Nomad Sculpt, but it would save me a massive amount of time of not having to shape out the rough object. So that's what I did. I dove into Nomad Sculpt on the iPad. I re-voxeled it so it was a higher resolution so I could then smooth out all the bumpy points, because even the higher quality paid for version of the export wasn't as good as I would have liked. But knowing my design had to fit onto the DeathRacer, I had to make a negative model in Fusion off of the DeathRacer CAD file so that I could take my head and put it on here and fit it to the parts that are gonna actually make this thing function. Without further ado, I present to you Gene's actual head. There's a fan in the BigTreeTech Kit that I did shove in there, but there's no fan mount, so it's literally just sitting inside of there. I'm probably gonna unplug that. As for testing this thing, the remote control takes AA batteries, and I don't know where any are at the moment. I was about to go see if I could find batteries for this, and then I realized I don't have any time. I've got to head out. So I didn't intend to include it in this video, but we're gonna go see what this thing can do on the field of battle in England. First 2 rounds, I was knocked out within 30 seconds of, and the last round, the 3rd round, I made it to the last 2, and my weapon isn't properly working, so I was stuck with whatever position it was in. I wasn't able to get it done, though. I knocked my own block off on the weapon of the track-disabled other competitor. So I lost to one that couldn't move. Calm before the storm here at SMRRF 2024. The DeathRacer made it in the suitcase. I'm shocked it came just fine. As I'm filming this before the show, I haven't synced this thing to the controller. I haven't set up anything. So I have no idea how the battle is going to go at this point. You probably know more than I do. Overall, this build has definitely been a trip, but I'm really happy to have gone through the process of building this. Despite the problems I did have with this kit, the hardware at the core is what I needed to get this thing built. So I do want to thank BigTreeTech for providing the kit and for coming out with it at all. It's what catalyzed me to finally build a DeathRacer. Hopefully they make the improvements that I'd like to see. And I definitely want to thank the folks at CookieCad for the beautiful color filaments they have made that allowed me to build this thing and sponsoring my trip to SMRRF 2024. Building this thing, getting here to the show is only thanks to the folks at CookieCad, so thank you to them. There'll be a link in the description so you can check out their gorgeous, beautiful, amazing filaments that I adore using. They're also just really sweet and lovely people. Please consider supporting them. I hope you folks found this video interesting. I've got to get to editing it, finishing this video here at my booth at the show so you folks can see it. If you did find this one interesting, maybe you'll enjoy this one, building the Model 18 Reaper just a couple of weeks ago, or this one that YouTube thinks is best for you. Get subscribed to ensure your 3D prints don't fail. It's not a guarantee, but it can't hurt. Back to editing.